talk some options levels. Mr. Kevin Green checking in with half an hour left. We're making some decent progress here, KG, off the lows of the day, but, it still is plenty of time, and it wasn't a pretty session. What stood out in what you watch?
Yeah, so today's session, we actually did see obviously a nice little move to the downside here, maybe some uneasiness when it comes to Nvidia, but this was actually a scenario, Oliver, where there's just a lot of long sellers getting into the marketplace, those that might have been holding positions but selling out of their positions. And the reason why I say that the options volume, for the most part, has pretty much been on par from what we've seen over the last 5 trading sessions. Nothing that really signifies that we just had a lot of this pressure to the downside when it comes to negative gamma levels. Now, obviously, we did hit negative gamma territory today, which just means that dealers, once they are a little bit off sides on this trade and they have to cover their position, that they might have to sell more futures contracts because of the exposure that they have as the market continues to move to the downside. Now, what we have seen on the volume chart for TOS here is a scenario where we had buyers actually stepping in at around the 55.60 level. And this is an area that we touched before and actually have been able to bounce off of, and it's really the last level that we kind of have. And when we saw those buyers stepping in, we saw a short covering event that actually did take place. Dealers started to buy back those futures that they sold, and we also had those that were in the options market, especially on the put side, selling out of those puts. That's where we are at right now. It's going to be a very hard close, though. It's going to seem like it's going to be very volatile, and here's the reason why. We can continue to have a melt up. You're going to have resistance at 55.90. That's the first area that I highlighted here. We kind of rejected it, and now we kind of pushed right through it. 5600 is where you're going to have a lot of puts still remaining here for this market after the sell-off. So are we going to have a wall at 5600? And if so, 5610 could be in the cards. The balance area for dealers are going to be 5600. Could you see a pen there, especially with Nvidia earnings? That could be possible. What you do not want to see is individuals getting back into these hedges going into the close, where we could actually have a full reversal and potentially testing that 55.70 level. And it doesn't seem like it's likely right now, but we are not out of the woods yet when it comes to this sell-off. I mean, we're still down about 0.5% on the session here today. It still has some headwinds when it comes to some key levels to the upside.
Okay, so today made it a little bit harder on us, or things didn't really shift from the market maker perspective? It's just now we're kind of starting from a lower point.
Yeah, it does make it a little bit harder. I just want to highlight this. I mean, if we go to the open interest chart for TOS, you can actually see that we continue to fade this 56.30 level. I actually highlighted here on the volume chart, but you can also look at it on the open interest chart, because as we go back over those last 5 trading sessions, you can see that we did not last above that level, and it continues to be rejected. And every time that we reject that level, Oliver, even though we tested it, every time that we reject it, it becomes a little bit stronger, and that's the big concern that I'm really focusing on here too. Also notice I have a 20-period moving average on that 15-minute chart too. Key moving average, if you're trading shorter time frames, we could see that that's actually an area of resistance right now as we're trying to test and break above it. But we did actually have a pretty decent breakdown in trading activity here, and on that chart you can see that we tested that 5600 level last week on August 22nd, and that was pretty much the last leg that we had to stand on.
Thursday.
So we actually had a full-on meltdown in this market because we were in negative gamma territory.
No, great point. I was literally looking at that in my chart too, because that's exactly where we bounced today. So these kind of levels are holding up pretty well from the Thursday low last week. As we've been talking here about the market in a range, we're still in that. We just flipped to the low end, basically, from the high end on Monday, right?
Yeah, and when we go to the low end, you want to see large volume kind of stepping in and really trying to bid it up. What you really don't want to have happen is us testing the low end and then breaking. Now, we did have a nice little bounce back. I would consider that to be a win for us for now.
Okay.
Obviously, we have some earnings announcements. That's going to be a huge mover either to the upside or downside. I would still say overall, if you're looking at the composition of this market, it's still bullish. We talk about liquidity all the time. I don't have the liquidity chart here, but actually liquidity is still looking good. We had contraction to start the week off. We actually did have that fill out and actually improve yesterday's session and even today's session. If you're kind of just high level looking at the market, even though we saw some strong selling activity taking place, there was still a pretty decent and liquid market in order to do so. That's ultimately bullish here, even though you had some selling activity taking place. But we have to really try to break above this 5630 level very quickly. I mean, we don't really want to stay below it over the next 2 or 3 trading sessions. And if we end the week below 5630, Oliver, I think that gives bears more confidence that they can knock this market down. And if they are able to knock it down, we make a lower high on that chart where you kind of are starting to hinge a little lower on the daily chart. And that's where you might say, okay, maybe valuations are a little bit too rich. Nvidia didn't impress us the way it did that we expected. And that's where you can get this selling activity taking place. So we have maybe 2 more days of this type of compressed action until you start questioning this move that we've had to the upside here over the last week.
Okay. All right. So we couldn't make the move we needed to put us in a safer place, right? We had the chance to set up on a higher perch, and we fell back out. So quite a chop here. But the range analysis has worked. It's been useful because we haven't broken out of that range. But as we've kind of said all along, is that you're going to probably need a big push. So either Nvidia this afternoon or data tomorrow. Thank you, Kevin Green.